I think deserves a whole session, at least one session. We spoke about Basher. Remember that? So this is a very important concept philosophically. In Judaism, every religion has to struggle with this concept. Now, what am I talking about? What is Basher?
It's meant to be.
Faith. Is everything preordained? Is everything geschrieben? You know that word? Geschrieben. Your grandma probably said, geschrieben, azoi geschrieben. Right? It's written. Kacha. In Israel, people say, lama, kacha. Why? Yeah, it's this way. So it's a very important, let's turn off the phones. So it's a very important question. How much are we in charge? How much are we in control of our behavior? It's a very important question. Because think about this. Everything, a lot of things depend on that. For example, sin. What is that young man who's been fighting the law? What is it called? The young man who claims that it's his parents who spoiled him. That's why. What is it called? There's a word for that. Affluence, right? So because he grew up very rich, it's their fault. They should go to jail. Now you all remember, it was before I came to this country, but I remember when I arrived here, this was the hottest discussion. Twinkles. Somebody stood up, a lawyer stood up in the courtroom and said, my client committed murder because he ate a lot of twinkles, whatever. What was it? Twinkies. What is it? A candy? Right? A cake. All right. So, you know what? So let's punish the chef who baked that cake. So I could not control my instincts. I could not control. It's a very important question. So I want us to spend at least one session on this because, and I'm curious about your opinion. A lot of times people say, just recently, I married Marilyn's grandson 2.5 years ago. And it's a lovely marriage and they have a baby now. And we went out to dinner a few weeks ago, and her grandson says, Rabbi, it was Basher. Why did we meet the first day in law school? Something like this, right? Well, I suspect that all of you have a story that had I not been there, had I not taken the left turn, but right turn, and how often we hear stories about 9/11. I suspect each one of you heard a story. I have a very dear friend who forgot a piece of paper in his apartment in Brooklyn. He had a meeting in the World Trade Center. He had to run back. He was already at the subway station. He had to run back to pick up that piece of paper, a very important document, and thanks to that, he missed the explosion. He arrived there 10 minutes later. How many of you heard a story that this one did not take the plane and because of that saved life and so on? Wow, look at this. Almost all of you have a story like this. Your son had an office there. Somebody left before it happened. Somebody had a meeting and then they forgot. All kinds of stories. We all know stories like this. So I gave a whole sermon a few years ago. I know some of you remember that. People were very moved by this. There's a famous moment. There is a great scene, one of my favorite scenes in the Torah, when Joseph is not getting along with his brothers. You remember the very beginning, he was an obnoxious kid, walking around with his jackets, showing off. Hey guys, you want to hear another dream of mine? Guess what? You're all good. You know, remember that, right? You all know the story, right? Everybody knows the story. You don't know the story of Joseph and his brothers? Okay, so why do they hate him? He's obnoxious. He is very arrogant. His father, this is, I always say this, parenting 101. The worst mistake you can make, if you have 13 children, remember Jacob had 13 children, not 12. Who do most people forget when we say 12? He had a daughter, Dina. Don't forget her. So when you have 13 children and you buy one jacket, red flag, big problem, or one toy. Everybody knows. When you have one baby, and then the second baby comes home from the hospital, what does everybody tell you? Make sure that the moment the baby arrives, you flood the first baby, the oldest one, with a lot of attention, a lot of toys, right? Yes or no? It's parenting 101. We all know that. The child who is the firstborn is used to all the attention, and suddenly some creature shows up. And everybody's paying attention, and suddenly this kid is upset. Anyway, so Jacob, our father, and you and I come from this guy. We're Bnei Israel. We are the children of Jacob. That's our name. So the Torah is sending us a message. We're all guilty of all kinds of stuff, like Yaakov does. Anyway, so he buys one jacket or the coat of many colors. In addition, if that was not enough, Joseph is clearly gifted, and something is charismatic about him. So he dreams. He's a dreamer, and so he dreams one first dream, and he shows up to the brothers. And basically, the dream is about one day you're all going to bow down to me. They don't like this idea. The next line, he has another dream. And again, he insists, hey guys, you want to hear my second dream? You're all going to bow down. And the stars and the sun and the moon. Now Jacob heard this. He says, shut up. Jacob now understands what he's doing. He's spoiled. He's ruining this kid. He says, the stars, okay, these are the brothers. And the sun and the moon, your mother and I will bow down to you. Stop it. And by the way, what are you walking around here? Your brothers are cooking over, not cooking, shepherding. What is it called? No, hunting. Herding the flock. Why don't you go and find out what's going on? How are they doing? So this is another interesting insight. He's also lazy. The entire family is working, and he's not working. He's at home. So Jacob sends him, go check out shalom of your brothers. Shalom can mean a lot of things. How are they feeling? When you say ma shlomcha in Hebrew, how are you feeling? How is your shalom? Shalom is shlimut. It's inner peace. How are your brothers doing? You don't care? So this is one of my favorite scenes. He goes into the fields. Not the fields, they live in the hills, in the mountains, right? If you know Israel, the mountains, the hills of Judah. He's walking, looking for his brothers. And suddenly we have a strange line there. Who remembers? How does he know where to find his brothers? Shepherds, they go around. It says, and he meets an Ish. Ish is a man. But usually whenever you say Ish, it means an important personality coming up. And he says, and he meets the Ish. We don't know the name. We don't know who he is. It doesn't say stranger. It actually says Ish. And so the Ish turns to Joseph and says, Et mi ata mevakesh? What are you looking for? And Joseph says, Et achai ani mevakesh. I'm looking for my brothers. And it's the Ish who says, oh, they went over there. what's the next scene? He goes there, and they say, oh, look who is coming. The dreamer is coming. Let us see what happens to him. And let us see what will happen to his dreams. And this is when they decide to kill him. First they want to kill him. Remember that?
Yeah.
And who stops the killing? Who says? Judah. He said, what does he say?
So we can make more money.
Let's get some cash. Which is another horrible scene. Let's get some cash for our brother. Yeah, we might as well make something. But the main point is then one thing leads to another one, and now we go and for 400 years we spend as slaves. My sermon was about the Ish. And I asked the congregation, I said, how many of you can go back in your life and say, oh, that was my Ish? Do you understand? I mean, isn't it that fascinating question? Who was my Ish in my life? If I did not go to this college, I was considering this college a week before the college. My cousin says, no, come to this college. Boom! You met your husband, you had your children, you moved to California, one thing led to another one. Who was your Ish? How many decisions we made that we're not totally sure why we made that decision, but something happened. Joseph would have been lost. He could walk around, come home and say, Dad, I couldn't find him. Who was that Ish? Who sent that Ish? It's an interesting question. Who sent the Ish in your lives that changed your life? And even more dangerous question, what if there was another Ish who sent you not to the left but to the right? How many things are really basher? How many things in our lives we are totally in control of? So this is a very interesting question, a very important question, and we'll go through this. Hopefully we'll get a better understanding, because there is a great line in the Talmud, in the Pirkei Avot. We studied it a couple of years ago. Rabbi Akiva, my favorite rabbi in the Talmud, he says, Akol tzafui, everything is predetermined. Everything is predetermined. Geschrieben. Ve'arishut netuna. But the free will is there. It's a paradox. How do you deal with this? Every philosophy has dealt with this. Everybody's struggling with this. See, we say, oh, it was Bashir. I met that boy. I went to the dance. He was on vacation from, he came from the army for 3 days, and he was the one who chose. How many stories I've heard in my life about that? And the people say that's Bashir. But Bashir can go both ways. What about, God forbid, was it Bashir for Carl? Was it Bashir for any survivor? Mm-hmm. Survivors tell us that there was no logic in the Holocaust. You went to the left and you survived. This guy went to the left and you're standing there, you have 2 seconds to decide, where do I go? And another person went and survived. So you go to the left and you get shot. There was no logic. Was that Bashir? Who chooses? And by the way, this is what the famous survivor's guilt is all about. I'm sure you've heard about this. You've met people like that. People say, why me? And they do not mean, no, I'm talking the other way around. They do not mean, why did this happen to me? The opposite. They say, how do I deserve? My mama did not deserve, my brother did not deserve. Who am I to have survived? And there are conferences and papers and books about this. Now, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, John and Daisy Mary, they go every year to another conference. And it's called, I forget what the title of the group is, but it's basically the second generation of survivors. So my mom was a survivor. Some of you have survivors in your family, right? So apparently, there is a price that we pay for parents who survive. So my mama, Zichrona Livracha, she witnessed 47 of her relatives being murdered in the Ukraine. You know, when they came to Russia, they didn't want to waste time putting people into ghettos and putting them on trains and so on. So in the Soviet Union, the system became very different. It was Einsatzgruppen. They would put them into the truck, sometimes exhaust fumes, and sometimes just shoot them, like Babi Yar, right there in the ravine. Some of us were standing right there. Anyway, so this is the survivor's guilt. Why did I survive? Why me? Was it Basher, my baby brother, my baby sister, my mama? It's a very interesting question. Anybody wants to comment on this? What do you feel? How do you feel? Forget it, I'm not talking just the Holocaust, generally. Do you feel that your life has been bashared, has been geschrieben, or do you feel that you made conscious choices? And by the way, today we have to not only talk about the Greeks and the Bible and the Mishnah and Rambam and the medieval philosophers and Thomas Aquinas, who struggled with that issue. But today we also have to talk about Freud. Freud shakes up this whole understanding of life. What does he say? Are we in control of our behavior? What is his main introduction, main innovation? Freud, psychology. What does psychology do to us? We are driven. It's subconscious drives and instincts. We don't even know why we do what we do. What are you talking about? Rational decisions? What are you talking about? The Torah says, behave nicely and you will be rewarded, and go to the left and listen to God. Freud says, what are you talking about? Nothing is rational. Everything we do is irrational. And what's the purpose of psychology then, or psychiatry? What's the goal of therapy?
Make you realize what you're doing.
Find out where it's coming from. We have reactions. Somebody came to talk to me recently and says, I noticed that I have reactions when my congregant says this. Oh, I think I mentioned to you, this was a board of the rabbis group. And one rabbi says, I decided New Year resolution. I think I mentioned to you. This rabbi says, I have a New Year resolution. And the New Year resolution is several times a day, I remind myself, I say to myself, they mean well. They mean well. Oh, I know where I brought it up. It was Bob Krasnow's class, and he was upset with me. He says, come on, Rabbi. When he cuts me in front, I want to kill that guy. I say, Bob, just say to yourself, they mean well. He says, no! He doesn't mean well. He's obnoxious. He's But you know what? It helps. And then for a rabbi especially, you know, when you have hundreds of congregants, everybody with their own mishigas, with their own agenda, with their own, motivations, and everybody. And I remember we had a professor, Simon Greenberg. Some of you remember from Philadelphia, Rabbi Simon Greenberg. He was your rabbi. He was our vice chancellor. He was a great man. I love this man. And he told us, he says, I remember it, we were already, I think I was senior in rabbinical school. And he says, you don't understand yet what your title will do to you. The moment a congregant knows a person, Jew, says, oh, Rabbi, it's not you, Feldman. It's a lot of baggage, right? You're nodding. A lot of baggage comes up. If she was neglected by her father as a little 5-year-old girl, you are the guilty one. She's going to throw all that anger at you because you represent, your title represents authority, daddy, and this and that. And boy, did I learn this. I did not know that. It's true. until you have that title, things change dramatically. A lot of people will use an authority figure. So basically the point is that we are sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, we react in irrational way. I'm standing at the Kiddush. There are 200 people, 300 people, and this person is trying to tell me something, and somebody else says, Rabbi, this person walks up with anger. Her conversation with me was interrupted by somebody else. And I see the reaction. Clearly it was overreaction. So what? There are 200 people, everybody is pulling me, right? But this person was not reacting to that particular case. So this is clearly the baggage that we carry. And this is the goal of therapy, the goal of psychology. What Freud did was, today most psychologists disagree with him, and he's put down, a lot of theories are disproven or whatever, not accepted. But he did something very important to us. He added another level. So it's not just geschrieben as opposed to bashert, or predetermined as opposed to free will. He says there is something in the middle that has nothing to do with free will. It's your subconscious that is driving you and guiding your behavior and so on. Any other comments? I want us to continue in the text now. Yes? Please turn off the phone, please, ladies and gentlemen. We should do this at the very beginning.
Some people just seem to have lucky lives, that they encounter something and they recognize it as an opportunity, whether it's the person or the situation. So other people don't recognize when an opportunity. I mean, you talk about someone meeting someone and knowing that's it. Some people do meet someone who would be perfect, but they don't recognize.
Okay, now this is an interesting question. That's an interesting question. Maybe I should tell you the story. I wanted to really continue here because this is what the text says here. You know what? Remind me to tell you a very famous story by Isaac Bashevis Singer.
Which one?
And it's called The Fatalist. Anybody knows that story? It's a short story by Isaac Bashevis Singer. Fatalist, that's what I want to talk about. I want to basically deal with this concept of fatalist. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Fatalist, the word fatalist, right? What is fatalist? Whatever it is, it is. It's all geschrieben, and there is nothing I can do. Accept it. That's right, resignation, which is not a very Jewish concept. It's a Greek concept. It's basically, fatalism comes from three goddesses of fates, three fates, and they basically sit there and they decide. And by the way, talking about marriage, it is an interesting story. That there is a line in the Talmud that says that even death is geschrieben. It is basher. So it goes like this: 40 days before the baby is born, it is decided up there who this baby will be, will marry, will become soulmate. So what's soulmate? So you have two souls before you get married. Before you're born, when you come out into the world, you lose half of the soul, and the rest of life is to find your soulmate. And you're right, in a way. Some people see something special, and within, I've heard stories, within 2 weeks, he proposed marriage. Another 2 months they were married, and they've been married for 67 years, and everything is wonderful. Some people date for 7 years, then they get married, within 6 months they're divorced. So how do you explain that? So is somebody sitting there telling you, you should recognize that this is the guy? And then the question becomes, if you want to really be more philosophical about this, is this the only one? You know, under the chuppah, I share what the couple told me, right? And I say, she is the only one. I've been looking for a long time. She is the one for me. Now, what does it mean? What if 5 years from now they get divorced and he gets remarried? The second one is also the one for him? At that time. Okay, but even that is a problem. Let's say he is seeing two girls and he thinks that this is the one for him. And then he changes his mind, doesn't show up to the chuppah, and there is this one. Was this the, I mean, do you understand? It's a very, very complicated question. So maybe I should tell you the story because it is very much connected to that. But first, any other comments?
You don't realize, but what you're saying today is a continuation of what Bob,
Because he spoke about luck.
he spoke about how much is luck in your life.
Yeah, well, I think it is a very important. I think the older we get, the more we realize that there is an element of luck. You may have 5 children, all growing up in the same family. And let's be even more tough. Let's say you have twins. They're growing up at the same time, the same stage in your lives, economically, financially, everything. The same neighborhood, the same school. One becomes a superhero, a big super achiever, and the other one is a total loser and drug addict. How do you explain this? Is it the genes? Well, it's the same genes. Is it environment? You know, people say, is it environment or is it heredity? You know, the famous, there's a famous joke about this. Where'd you come from? I don't know. Mom, they say it's heredity. You know, you're the guilty one. So.
Is luck the same as the share?
No.
That's what I.
No. Luck.
I'm reading those.
Well, see, luck. I'm sorry I missed that session by Bob. I think luck is different. Fatalism, well, I'll tell you the story and you'll tell me, is it luck or is it, fatalism is Bashar. It's written there. Luck is, you were about to step into that train and suddenly you got a phone call. I remember there was a film, Sliding Doors. You remember I showed it here. Isn't it an amazing film? She misses the train and everything in her life changes. Who was the actress there? Gwyneth Paltrow. So it's a fascinating, I showed it here because I think I showed it before High Holidays. It was Slichot. Because that's also an interesting question. You know, we believe in tshuva. We believe, psychologists believe that you can actually get rid of those impulses and so on, control them, find out, determine where it's coming from. Oh, I know where it's coming from. When I was 7 years old, my best friend betrayed me. So now I'm, snapping at my husband, whatever it is, right? That's therapy, that's psychology. Judaism says do tshuva. You have to say, for 24 hours, you stand there and you say, I'm no good, I made mistakes, I've sinned, and this and that, and make a resolution. By the way, the most painful, the most emotional prayer is in the Tana Token. Who shall live and who shall die? Berosh Hashanah tikatevun. What's tikatevun in Yiddish? In Yiddish? Geschrieben.
Yeah, but it says you can change your faith by...
Hold on. So do you understand what we say? The most powerful, the most emotional prayer of the entire year? On Rosh Hashanah, it's geschrieben. It's written. Tikatevun means, literally, it's written. And Yom Tov,
It's sealed.
sealed. And we continue, who shall die and who shall live and who shall suffer and who shall wander and who shall be at peace, And what is the ending of the entire prayer? Tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah. So tshuva, repentance or do that work on yourself, right? Tefillah, believe in God, pray, get closer to God, all kinds of interpretations, obviously, work with God, try to follow God, and so on. Tzedakah, charity, but it's more than charity. Do righteous things to people and so on. And then what will happen?
Avert your,
Reverse?
change your.
Year after year, I say, ladies and gentlemen, it never says that it will change the decree. What does it say? Maverim et ro'ah agzera. What is ro'ah? The pain of the decree. It will make it easier for you to deal with what geschrieben. That's a big difference. Do you see what's going on? The rabbis were very honest. They're basically saying, yes, there is something that is basher. There are things that, but if you work hard on yourself, you can prepare yourself for whatever comes. You cannot say, oh, my daddy was giving tzedakah all his life. Why did he get cancer? That's not a logical question. We spoke about this. Flo is not here. Instead of saying, why me? You should say, why not me? So Judaism never promises you that if you pray hard, everything will be okay. No. Ma'avirin et ro'ah agzera. It doesn't say gzera. So Gail, you understand? Be careful.
There's a difference, yeah, very big difference.
It's a big difference. Do you all understand the difference? Gzera means the decree. What Machzor tells us, the prayer book says, it will change, it will lessen the pain of the Gzera. Gzera is Gzera, God forbid. Things happen. So this is the conflict, and I want to go through the Greeks and the medieval period, and then bring it together. What do moderns feel? Because even Freud, maybe not Freud, but since Freud, like Skinner, you know that psychologist?
Yeah.
Skinner was a very deterministic one. It's a determinism, it's called, as opposed to fatalism. Fatalism is the Greek word. Anyway, but even he says, oh, but wait a minute, it's middle of the road. It's not that we cannot do anything about that. That's what the goal is. The goal is, yeah, we're driven, but you know what? Identify the drives and build self-control. You can control, you can delay gratification. Of course, we're driven. Judaism is more honest about human nature, ladies and gentlemen. Judaism understands our weaknesses. In fact, again, on Yom Kippur, we constantly say to God, you know who we are. You created us this way. Forgive us. Give us another chance. Okay, we are going to read that conclusion of the chapter and start 9, but I want to tell you this story since I already kind of opened the door. Isaac Bashevis Singer, and the title is The Fatalist. So I'm going to summarize for you. You can get it in the library, of course. In fact, I was last night with my friends Joseph Telushkin and Dvora Telushkin. They're in town. And Dvora, I think some of you remember that, she worked for Isaac Bashevis Singer for 8 years. She was his translator. And so we were talking about this. And she's the one who reminded me. I said, you know, it's such a difficult topic. I want to talk about fatalism with my group. And Dvora says, well, do you remember Singer Isaac wrote a story about this? Tell them this story. It's an interesting twist to the story. So this is how it goes. The author says, you know, in these shtetl, people, almost everybody has a nickname. You know, Moshe the Shlimazel, and Sarah the Miskite, and so on, right? He says, I come to this town. I arrived there to teach Hebrew. I was a Zionist, and I arrived there, and I hear that there is a guy by the name of Benjamin the Fatalist. He says, I was very surprised. In a little shtetl, how do they know such a sophisticated concept, the fatalist? You know, people did not go to Harvard University. That's a Greek concept, philosophical concept. So he says to the person who is in charge of the Polei Zion, of this organization that brought him to teach Hebrew, he says, how do people come up with a title, with a nickname like this? He says, well, it's an interesting story. He says, this guy arrived from, we don't even know where he arrived from, quite a few years ago. And he was walking around telling everybody that he's a fatalist. And people said, what does it mean? He says, everything is masher. Everything is predetermined. And don't worry, just relax, accept it. And people kind of made fun of him and this and that. So I don't remember the details, but I'm summarizing. So you should look it up. Maybe we could go online and read it. Anyway, so one day, the richest guy in town had a daughter. Her name was Hyla. And so everybody wanted Hyla. She was pretty, she was sharp, she was tough, she could witty, whatever you said to her, she had an answer because she was very particular. Nobody was good enough for her. So one day, at some party, I guess, some event, she was also a Zionist. So he says we were all there at a meeting talking about Zionism and Palestine and this and that. Suddenly, the fatalist goes to Hyla and says, Hyla, it is determined that you will be my wife. So why should we try to fight the inevitable? Let's get engaged. She says, yeah, it is determined that I should tell you that you're a total idiot. and you're arrogant and obnoxious and you don't have a chance with me. Very soon after, she gets engaged to Solomon. The problem is Solomon has an older sister, so they have to postpone the wedding, out of respect for the sister, so there was a whole period of waiting. So another meeting of the Zionist group, he goes to her and he says, Hyla, are you actually going to marry that guy, Solomon? I told you. It's already predetermined that you will be mine. And at this point, she says, you really believe that it's all predetermined? He says, yeah, you cannot change the fate. I'm a fatalist, I believe strongly. So she says, I'll tell you what. Why don't you prove to us that you're a real fatalist? We have a train that goes twice a day near our village. Are you willing to lie down on the tracks and before the train comes? If you are willing, then we will all believe, right, guys? Everybody says, yeah, we will all believe that you're a real fatalist. So he says, okay, there's one problem. This is like Russian roulette. It's a game. I need another partner in the game. So if I'm willing to accept some responsibility, you have to promise something else. She says, what? He says, if I die, the train kills me, go marry Solomon. But if I survive, you have to become my wife. Okay, Hyla? Hyla looks at him, looks at everybody else, there was silence. And she says, okay, it's a deal. So people are whispering, people are nervous, what will happen? So the following day, they knew the schedule of the train. He goes and he lies down there. And they're all nervous. The guy who's telling the story, the chairman of this group, telling the story to Isaac, he says, we're nervous, we hope, we're standing there, we are hoping that the moment we hear the train and the rails will start shivering, shaking, that he will pull away. The train is beginning to come. we hear the train. At this point, Hyla comes close and says, okay, all right, you got your point. Come on, let's not play games here. He says, get away, 20 yards from me. And everybody, so the guys are standing there saying, okay, listen, we don't have a choice. We have to run up and pull him. I mean, the guy maybe took very crazy. So Isaac, the author, saying to the chairman, what happened? He says, it was amazing. We're standing, total silence. All we hear is the train coming. He's there and he says, out! Everybody pull away. If anybody tries to pull me out, I will grab you and you will come be right next to me. You understand? Now, you're taking a chance of your life if you want to save it. So, the train is coming. Woo! He's not moving. He's not moving. And suddenly, the train begins to slow down. I guess something happened. And eventually stops. 1 yard before, how much is yard? Like a meter? 1 yard before the fatalist, the train stops. That's the end of the story. Isaac says to the chairman, so, did they get married? He says, yeah. They got married, they have 4 children. He says, really? Is he still a fatalist? He says, yeah, he is. Would he do this again? The secretary, the chairman smiles and says, not for Hyla. The last line is masterpiece. Without the last line, you don't get the point. But it's answering your question. It was geschrieben, and he proved it to her. But it was, obviously, that was not a good marriage. So not for Hyla. It's a great story. When I was Dvora reminded me this last night, I said, you know what, I have to share this story. It is a powerful story. So here we have a fatalist, a Jewish fatalist, in a Zionist group in a shtetl. Let's continue now. Okay, let's continue. Eric, you have not read in a long time. I want to finish chapter 8 and begin chapter 9. You see the big 9 in the middle of the page? You see that? The big 9? We finished, well, we might as well read 15. Eric, let's begin. Everybody is with us. The chapter, the page where 9 is in the middle, that's chapter 9. 15, we dealt with 15 already. We spoke about hedonism and pleasure and the differences, what kind of pleasure. There are different layers of pleasure. I told you that Epicureans are not necessarily the ones who love gourmet food. That originally the opposite was true. I think that it's ironic that there are restaurants and stores that call Epicurean and they, very fancy food. How do you say Epicurean in French? Is there such a thing? You have restaurants and stores in Paris, yeah, called Epicurean. Okay, so in Miami Beach, this is the most famous store. Anybody knows that store? Miami Beach is right there on Alton. It's 80% of Jews go there. Everybody from Fisher Island comes specially to. It's gorgeous. I mean, everything is amazing. Do you go there, Stuart? Yeah? He's a Epicurean. So he's a hedonist. Okay. I did. I think we spoke last week about this. That Epicure is basically, they're very close to, almost close to ascetics. Oh, look who is here. Mr. and Mrs. Katz are here. Stanley, you missed a very important thing, but we're talking about your relationship. Bashar, this is an adorable couple. How many years have you been married? 62. 62 years. And they met, they were young kids, and look at them, they're still in love. So these are the honorees, ladies and gentlemen, this Sunday. We look forward to a great event. And I saw Bert last night and Judy. I was having dinner next to them with my friend Joseph, and Bert is excited, he's coming. Anyway, I'm sorry you missed it, but Marilyn, you'll have to tell him the story about the fatalist, that story. Not highly. Don't forget that last line. I love that line. Not too highly. Anyway, so okay, so let's begin. 15. We finished. I don't want to go back to that, but I think we covered enough about 15. Let's go.
I therefore praise enjoyment, for the only good a man can have under the sun is to eat and drink and enjoy himself. That one can accompany him in exchange for his wealth through the days of life that God has granted him under the sun.
Okay, so instead of his wealth, the Hebrew actually says for labor. So you work hard, you don't quite understand, is there a reward or punishment? Should I be good? Should I be not good? It's depressing, it's frustrating. He says it's frustrating to me to see that sometimes the good people are suffering and so on and so forth. So as a result, he says, you know what? Enjoy today and be grateful. Gratitude is a very important concept in Judaism. I mean, we are the ones who came up with the concept of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, as you probably know, the Puritans looked, the first year was a horrible year in the colony, right? You all know that. They lost half of the colony. So they died. They died, disease, starvation. They were not prepared for the climate, plus the Indians and so the following fall, suddenly they planted and things are happening. They were looking for a model. How do we celebrate that? And remember that they loved our Bible, not necessarily the New Testament. It's interesting that the Puritans, one of the ideas was, let's go back to the original. And today, a lot of Christian people, they go back to the original. Sunday night, we had a fabulous event. How many of you came here on Sunday night? So we had like 350 people here. Very powerful event. I would say we had probably 80, 90, 100 people who were not Jewish. We had Christians, we had Coptics, and we had Muslims. I'm sorry many of you did not come. It was a very moving event. You all remember Yazidis? Yazidis, it's a minority group. It was a very moving story. Forgive me for a minute, Eric. I think everybody should know this story. A Moroccan Jew from Montreal. Adorable couple. They have 6 children. Did you see his wife? Those of you who are here, she looks like she's in college. She's a mother of 6 kids. Adorable. Anyway, they live in Montreal, and his business is very unusual business. He collects, buys and sells antique cars. What do you call them? Not antique, what do you call them? What is it? Vintage. Vintage cars. By the way, it's interesting. That's one of the reasons we're going to Cuba in 2 weeks. I want to drive those cars. Everybody gets to sit in that car and drive it. You cannot find them anywhere except for Cuba. Anyway, so Saddam Hussein is killed. And he finds out, he hears that Saddam Hussein had 50 vintage cars, which is interesting. People say that Leonid Brezhnev had 500 vintage cars. And Leonid Brezhnev, the chairman of the Communist Party, collected cars. I don't know how many Putin has. I think Putin saves jets and not cars. Anyway, so he wants to go and somehow buy those cars and bring them to Canada, America. His wife says, absolutely no. You're a Jew, you're religious, you're not going to Iraq. He has a partner who is not Jewish. He sends the partner to go to Iraq to see if we can buy those cars. And while there, the partner hears the stories about ISIS, about Yazidis, and the Christians. He's a good Christian, this guy. And he hears these horrible stories. The girls who are sold into sexual slavery are 11 and 12 years old. 11 years old. And he told us, he says, imagine, these girls come from the mountains. They've never seen a movie. We're not talking about body parts. They've never seen a kiss. They don't know what people are kissing. Imagine, they take 11-year-old girl, they sell her for $50 to a crazy guy who came from maybe Yemen because he heard that for $50 you get a slave. You know, a lot of these people, I don't know if you saw Wall Street Journal on Saturday, there was a big article about how sexuality plays a very important part in these recruits for ISIS. These people are suppressing their sexuality. And ISIS promises them not only 72 virgins when you die, but also come to us and you'll get a 12-year-old girl. So he told us, the stories that we learned, we heard, it breaks your heart. He says it's beyond anything. It's basically Nazi kind of behavior. They take this girl from the family, they do this in front of the mother and the father, or maybe they rape the mother first. There was one mother, because we had 3 professors also at the table there on the panel. And one professor asked this guy, Mammon, he says, is there one particular story that shook you up, that you remember? And he told us a horrible story. So there was this girl and the mother and the father. So they tied up the father to watch. They raped the mother, but then they brought 10 guys. And she resisted. And so he takes the mother and they bring hungry dogs and they throw her into the streets and she's eaten by dogs. That's the stories that we hear. So this Jewish man living in Montreal hears about these tragedies and he says, you know, we say never again. Once again, another genocide is taking place and we're not doing anything. And so he devotes his life. He decides to devote his life to this cause. And he goes all around Canada and comes to America. Apparently he found a lovely family in Boca Raton. What's the name of that company? He told us. Very famous fashion name. I forget what it's called. Anyway, a family in Boca Raton, a Jewish family, gives him a major check. And he has been able, basically, single-handedly, one person, with people on the ground, so to speak. He does not go to Syria or Iraq. He has local people, Christian leaders and others, and he of course pays and bribes and so on. He was able to save 140 of those girls. 140. And they showed us videos, heartbreaking. They show you one girl. Oh, what happens is, the first guy who came from another country gets tired of this girl. So what does he do? He sells her to another guy for the same $50, and then he can buy another girl. So the same $50 can go very far. Good life. So this one girl who went through several masters like this, he saves her. This man, the Jewish guy. And she is begging, she is not sure if the father is still alive. And they brought her, I think in Turkey, to the border, and they show us the video, the reunion between the father and the child. The reunion, they meet. He did not know if his child was alive, she did not know if her father was alive. Anyway, horrible story. Why did I bring up this story? No, we were talking about something that...
Cars was reading.
What?
Cars.
Oh, the cars, vintage cars. No. But what's the connection? Anyway, I forget. There was some connection here.
Linked between Christians, Jews, Muslims. And it's easy that you had this meeting last Sunday.
How did this come up to do with this? Under the sun. Anyway, enjoy life right now, basically. That's what the 15 says. Let's continue. 16. Now remember, yes?
There's an appendage to that, eat, drink, and be merry. The appendage is eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die.
Okay, well, you'll see. It comes up in the middle. Yes, you're right. So basically, since we all know where we end up, enjoy today. Gratitude. That's how I came to this. Gratitude is a major, major Jewish concept. We taught the world about all that. That's how I got it. Thanksgiving, the Puritans, they loved the Torah, and they look into the Bible, and they say, how do you celebrate freedom? And they found out in the Torah the concept of Sukkot. When we sit in the sukkah in a little hut, and we shake the lulav and we say, thank you, hallelujah, hallel, hallel, thank you God for the little things in life. Enjoy little things in life, and so on. And that's why, that's the concept of Thanksgiving. But Judaism goes one step further. I think I've mentioned this over the years. We're supposed to find 100 opportunities every day to say thank you. 100 opportunities. Basically, it's blessings. You take a piece of bread, you say, Baruch atah, thank you God for a piece of bread. You drink a glass of water. So if you observe the basic brachot, you already fulfilled maybe 25. If you come to Minyan, you fulfilled another 35. Because we begin the service with a Baruch atah, Baruch atah, Baruch atah. You have to walk around the whole day looking, what else can I say thank you for? Now some are very basic, but some, for example, those of you who live on South Ocean, you're missing an opportunity every day, twice a day at least. You should say, thank you, you created great oceans and seas. We have a blessing for that. If you see a rainbow, it's in the back of the Siddur, by the way. If you open the Siddur, we have 5 pages. You see a rainbow, you say a blessing. You see a rabbi, there is a blessing for them. You go to a professor lecture, there is a blessing for that, different from a rabbi. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. A scholar, a rabbi gets one blessing. A knowledgeable guy on television gets another blessing. What's the difference? You can guess probably. What do you thank God for here and there? Over there, knowledge. Over here, wisdom. They assume that rabbis have a little bit more wisdom, maybe not all the knowledge. Anyway, so thank you. Thanksgiving is a very important idea in Judaism. Enjoy the day. Enjoy what you have today. Eat, drink, enjoy yourself. This is what will accompany you for your labor. Not wealth, for your labor. All right? But now, he is the wisest man who ever lived. Look what he says at the end of chapter 8. Continue, please, Eric. 16.
For I have set my mind to learn wisdom and to observe the business that goes on in the world, even to the extent of going without sleep day and night.
I spent my entire life trying to understand what is this all about. It's not fair. I see no punishment, no reward. And we're all dying, and the same fate meets everybody. The good guys and the bad guys and the evil guys. I'm struggling with this. Yes, and what did I find?
And I have observed all that God brings to pass. Indeed, man cannot guess the events that occur under the sun.
You cannot fathom God's plan. This is similar to Job. The ending of Job, Job says, oops, I spoke too much. Forgive me. Who am I to try to comprehend your wisdom? We are humans, and he is God, and that's the difference. It's maybe not satisfying, but remember what we said. Is there an answer that would satisfy you? Would you like to understand God? Do you want to know everything about God? Then by definition, we lose what God is all about. Continue.
For man tries strenuously fails to guess them. And even if a sage should think to discover them, he would not be able to guess them.
All right. So this is the first time in Jewish literature where basically says, forget it. No matter how wise you are, there is a limit to our understanding. And we'll talk about fatalism, and you'll see. Basically, Maimonides, the greatest philosopher, Jewish philosopher who ever lived, he says it's basher. And yet there is free will. That's the paradox, right? Fatalism, it's all predetermined. God is in charge. But you have free will. How can it be? Do I have a free will or not? Is he controlling? Why is there a Holocaust? How come he didn't stop? Right? This is the paradox. And so Maimonides says, basically, both are true, but it's mystery. You cannot really totally understand. Comments, questions?
Did you read about the young woman in Israel last week who protected herself with the Torah and survived the stabbing?
Yeah. There was a story. I vaguely remember. She put the Chumash, the Torah, in front of her, and that's protecting her from stabbing and so on. Listen, there are miraculous stories about the Holocaust. That the entire synagogue burnt. Beautiful building, everything burnt, and then they walk in and there is a separate Torah not touched. There are things we don't understand. That's how it started, Stanley. You asked me at the dinner 2 weeks ago when we were talking, sitting next to Stuart, and you said, "So, Rabbi, what do you think about the Basher?" Right? So, is it all written? Is it all predetermined? And yet, if all is predetermined, what's the real problem with that? If we are fatalists, what's the real problem? Morally, what's the problem? No incentive. Who said that? No responsibility. What do you want from me? I was driven. It was determined that I should rape her. It was determined that I should shoot the Jews. It was determined. So that's the problem with this story of Isaac Bashevis Singer that I just told you. It was determined, he felt strongly that Haile is the one. And yet, now that they have 4 children, what did he learn? Not again, never again. Not Haile. So this is a problem. If you are totally fatalistic, if you say everything is Basher, you have a serious problem. How can you punish? How can you reward? We don't have free choice. We don't have free will. Then there is no motivation to be nice. There is no motivation for anything. Why work? Why bring children into the world? I should just sit by the pool. I know many people do that. Just play golf for the rest of your life. You know why? It's Basher, right? Yes, comments.
That bar mitzvah a couple weeks ago was a miracle to me.
Okay, that's
With that young man.
yeah, some people would say there are miracles that even the parents were shocked. The parents did not accept it. They did not expect this. In fact, when we began to work, the parents said to me, you know our child, don't expect from him what you expect from others, because I'm tough with the kids. I push them. This Shabbat, this Shabbat we have another bat mitzvah, Rabbi Eisenman's granddaughter, which is fascinating. 14 generations of rabbis. 14 generations of rabbis, and number 15 is her mother. Do you understand? So she's going to speak about this. The bat mitzvah this Shabbat, she's going to speak about. On my Zaydi's side, 14 generations of rabbis, and now my mom, the first woman rabbi in that line. And my grandma's side, 8 generations of rabbis, including a former rabbi of Temple Bethel. Mrs. Eisenberg, the Rebbitzin Eisenberg, grew up in this shul. Eisenman. Her father was a rabbi here for 7-8 years. It's an amazing coincidence. So she's going to conclude. I'll give you a secret. She's going to conclude the speech. So 14 generations of rabbis here, 8 generations on this side. So you're probably wondering, will I be the 16th generation? Talk to me 13 years from now. She's a very special child. Every Shabbat, during Kiddush or Oneg, she takes me aside. Rabbi, you said something that I was not sure I understood. She goes into the details and analyzes and so on. Okay.
She's not being around.
We're not sure. Yeah, she may be. Shelley just walked in, and this reminds me that we saw a powerful film yesterday at the film festival in Gale. I don't know if they will repeat. Any of you were taking advantage of the Jewish Film Festival? It was a powerful documentary, really powerful, about Zionism. What is it called? Conflicting Visions. Colliding. Is it going to repeat somewhere? I don't know.
In Del Rey.
In Del Rey.
Interesting discussion.
It was an interesting discussion. I had to run, unfortunately. Yeah?
People weren't happy with it.
Unhappy. I thought it was middle of the road, and I told Joseph Telushkin, and that's why I was running out. We were having dinner, and I told him that he needs to watch it. Because, you know, he works with Danny Abram. You know, this is not a secret. He writes books for Danny Abram. And Danny Abram is basically very left when it comes to peace and so on. You know, he wrote a book during Intifada, and the title was Peace is Possible. Are you wondering why only 22 copies sold? Even though my friend wrote the book. Yeah, it's, anyway, so I told Joseph he needs to see this documentary because I think there is a New York Film Festival going on right now also, so it's probably going to be there. Very powerful. It's about Zionism. I thought it was middle of the road. Did you think it was?
Well, nobody else did.
People thought it was very much
Left.
to the left.
Unhappy with it.
Really? It's a very disturbing movie. It basically tells you, was Zionism, it asks a very good question. Was Zionism a good idea? Did we do the right thing? Who are we to come from Europe and displace a whole nation there? It's a very, very controversial film. It will get a lot of reviews and so on. But I thought it was powerful. Let's continue. We still have about 10 minutes. Let's go. So, chapter 8. The wisest man who ever lived tells us what about wisdom? What did he say? You cannot learn. I tried everything. Day and night, sleepless nights. I struggled so hard, it's impossible to comprehend God's plan. So, is he basically saying it's Bashar? Forget it? Just resign? Accept it? We shall see. Because he's not a Buddhist. And he is not a Stoic. Remember I told you about the Greeks called Stoics? Stoics are very similar to Buddhists. What do the Stoics say? I'm sure you use this word. Oh, this guy, he's like a Stoic. What is Stoic? What comes to your mind? What? Rigid, tough. But where does it come from? Emotionally. What does it mean? How do I become tough? What do they say about emotions?
No, don't show emotions.
What?
Suppress the emotions.
Stoic.
Minimum emotion, minimum attachment. It's like similar to Hinduism and Buddhism. Hinduism, why do we have the caste system in India? It's like it's Bashar. You don't change. It's just accepted. This is life. And that's one of the reasons that people in India can smile while they're homeless. There is something to it. And you go to Thailand and other places. Now, Japan is a little bit different. Taoism is very different. But anyway, Stoics are similar to Hindus and to Buddhists. Accept it. Don't be attached too much. And then I told you what's the problem with that? Emotionally speaking. Remember I told you, what? You cannot be in love. If you are in love, you'll get attached. There is a price. There is a price for being in love. You then get hurt. And if you basically say, you know what, I don't want to be hurt. That's what Stoics are saying. You know, I lost a child. I lost a wife. Life goes on. Why not me? So again, ladies and gentlemen, I think what we're coming to the end of the book, and what we're learning from Kohelet, from King Solomon, who lived a long life, a rich life. What we're saying is, I think what we're learning is there is no black and white in life. You see, more and more I'm struggling with paradoxes here. That's what we were talking about. Eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow you die. Even that is not black and white. He does not mean, I can enjoy myself no matter what. And you saw that even the Greeks said, don't hurt your friends. Friendship is important for some groups, and so on and so forth. Let's begin chapter 9. Yes?
Eat, drink, and be merry means no commitment, no pain, no work. And what you're saying, that he explored wisdom, or tried to achieve wisdom by working. And so didn't he derive pleasure in life from actually pursuing wisdom, more so than eating and drinking and being merry?
Well, both. He spoke, remember chapter 2, or chapter 3, I think, begins by saying, it's better not to be too wise. Remember? It's easier to be stupid, basically. We all know this. Who has the phone, please?
No matter how many times
No matter how many times I ask. Anyway, do you remember he says to us at some point, we had a whole discussion about this. Are you sure you want to be wise? Are you sure? What does he say? The more wisdom, remember he says the more wealth, the more problems, worries. The more wisdom, the more pain. People who don't think too much, who watch football and drink beer, they're better off in a way. They don't ask fundamental questions in life. They are laughing. People are making fun of Donald, right? People say, but he doesn't have that plan. He doesn't have it's not sophisticated, it's not, but you know what? There are millions of people who respond to that. Who needs, all the details? I have a better plan. Kasich, I love this guy, but he's a schlimazel. I feel for him. He's a good guy, but he says, well, he stands like this. I have experience. I was in Congress. I took care of the budget. And Donald says, low energy. And his ratings go up. Did you hear what he said this week? This is crazy. He says, I can stand up in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot, and my polls will go up.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Disgusting.
This is like really no filter. Talking about no filter. Of course he's joking. Everything is a joke for him. But the point is, going back to Kohelet, talking about wisdom. Yes, he spent all his life trying to understand wisdom, trying to go deeper. And what is he saying? No way! I cannot understand this. Man cannot fathom God's plan. The events that occur under the sun, the man tries strenuously, but he fails to guess what's going on. What he's saying is there must be a plan. God is in charge. But we don't know the plan. And this, again, it's not black and white, ladies and gentlemen. It's not, I'm an atheist, there is no God. And it's not, everything. It's, life is somewhere in between. There is a lot of gray areas.
There's a Yiddish saying, I can't say it in Yiddish. Man plans and God laughs.
Yeah, that's a famous line. How do we say this? Man tracht and God lacht. Yes, sir.
However, isn't it also true that we only have like 86,000 seconds in a day, and time is the most precious thing, not dollars? So if we're pursuing wisdom rather than drinking...
Oh, Bob, I'm sorry. You missed a whole year last year. We spoke about wealth. He speaks constantly about wealth. The whole chapter is devoted. He says it's a waste. And he gives us 5 reasons why he wasted his time, his life, building all those palaces. And one of them, I think I brought up when we're talking about this. We spoke about this. He says, why do we work so hard we worry what we're going to leave to our children. He says, how do you know? Your kid may be an idiot, or maybe totally irresponsible. You worked all your life, and he will waste it in 2 months. He will go to Vegas. So that's one of the reasons, but many other reasons. He says, yeah, I had all the wealth in the world, and therefore I decided to go for wisdom. But then he spends a whole chapter destroying that also. And here, the ending of this sad chapter, very deep chapter, chapter 8 is very powerful. That's why we spent 2 months on this. He basically saying, but where is reward and punishment? It's not fair. In a way, the Torah says, God says, if you follow me, everything will be wonderful. He says, but that's not true. I'm frustrated. And so he says there is a limit to wisdom even too. So now what's left? He tried sex. He had 700 wives. Right? And 300 concubines. You know what concubines are, by the way? This is not affairs. It's basically wives. So 1,000 wives. And then what does he say? I have not found one. Remember that line about women? Very angry line. He says, maybe out of 1,000 men, I can find one good guy. But out of 1,000 women, I could not find one good woman. But I have good news for you. Next week, we have a gorgeous line about women. And we have to stop here. So next week, we'll talk about... Maybe he will... Okay, so Betty Sue defends the women. Please give the text to Betty Sue.